Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I've always loved the silence of the woods at night. There's something sacred about being alone in the middle of nowhere, just you and the trees and the endless black sky overhead. It makes you feel small in the best way possible. But after what happened last summer, I don't think I'll ever camp alone again. I had picked a spot deep in a national forest, miles from the nearest town, even farther from any marked trails. The kind of place where no one can bother you. Just me, my tent, a crackling fire, and the whispering wind through the trees. The first night was peaceful, just the usual sounds of crickets and distant rustling in the underbrush. A few owls called to each other in the distance. It wasn't until the second night that things got wrong. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside my tent. Not the soft, erratic patter of an animal. These were slow, steady, human. I held my breath, listening. The steps crunched through the leaves, stopping just a few feet from where I lay. I felt a chill roll down my spine. No one should be out here. I hadn't seen another person for miles. Slowly, I reached for my flashlight, my fingers trembling as I wrapped them around it. "Hello," I called out, trying to keep my voice even. No answer. The silence that followed was worse than the footsteps. I sat up, every nerve in my body screaming. I hesitated for a long moment, then unzipped my 10-inch, just enough to shine my flashlight outside. The beam cut through the thick fog that had rolled in, illuminating the trees. And then I saw him, a tall figure, standing completely still about 20 feet away. No flashlight, no backpack, no gear, just standing there, watching me. The second my light hit him, I felt something shift, like an unseen force pressing down on me. He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't react at all. I turned the flashlight off and sat in the dark, heart pounding. My fingers wrapped around the small hunting knife I kept beside me. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. I could still feel him there, even though I couldn't see him anymore. Minutes dragged by. The fog thickened. And then something even worse happened. The footsteps started again. But this time, they weren't walking away. They were circling my tent. Crunch. Crunch, crunch. I squeezed my eyes shut. My breath came fast and shallow. The slow, deliberate steps moved around me, over and over again. I wanted to scream, but my throat had closed up. Then nothing. The footsteps stopped. I don't know how long I stayed like that, curled up in the darkness, knife clutched so tightly my fingers ached. Eventually, exhaustion won. I must have fallen asleep. Morning light seeped through the thin fabric of my tent. For a moment, I thought maybe it had been a nightmare, that I had imagined it. And then I stepped outside. The footprints were everywhere, circling my tent. Deep, bare footprints pressed into the damp earth. No shoes, no socks. Just skin against dirt, and they didn't lead anywhere. No starting point, no trail, just a ring of footprints, as if someone or something had materialized right there in the fog. I packed up my gear in record time. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely roll up my sleeping bag. I didn't bother eating. I just wanted to leave. The whole hike back to my truck, I felt eyes on me. I never heard anything else. Never saw anyone, but the feeling never left. Like something was still watching. And the worst part, the nearest road was over 10 miles away. If that was a person out there, what the hell were they doing so deep in the forest? Story 2. We weren't supposed to be there. That's what I keep thinking about now. Looking back, remembering how that trip started. If we'd chosen a different campsite, a different weekend, hell, if we'd just gone to a motel instead, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe I wouldn't be sitting here, writing this, wondering if something is still watching me. But we were there, and we saw it. It started like any other camping trip. For guys, an old Jeep, and a thirst for adventure. It was me, Jake, Ben, and Sam. We'd been hiking the Appalachian Trail since we were teenagers, and this was supposed to be just another weekend in the woods, a break from our jobs, our routines, the monotony of life. We found a clearing about 10 miles off the main trail, deep in a part of the forest where the trees stood too still and the wind barely made a sound. But we didn't think much of it at the time. We were too busy setting up camp, cracking beers, and joking about who was going to fall on the fire first. Then we heard the laughter. It was distant at first, high and sweet, like a little girl playing in the woods. We all went quiet. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Jake laughed. "Probably a fox or something. They make weird noises, man." Ben nodded, but his face was tight. "Yeah, a fox. The thing is, it wasn't a fox. We all knew it. The sound was too human, too deliberate. And there was something else, something under the surface of it that sent a shiver through my bones. It came again, closer, a giggle, playful, like a kid hiding behind a tree, waiting for us to find her." Sam cleared his throat. "All right, now it's creepy." We tried to ignore it. We forced ourselves to keep talking, keep drinking, keep the fire going. But one by one, we fell into silence, our ears straining, waiting for another sound. It never came. By the time we crawled into our tents, the fire had burned down to embers, and the forest had returned to its usual hush. I told myself it was nothing, just an echo, a trick of the wind. Then, sometime past midnight, I heard it again, right outside my tent. A giggle, low, guttural. I stopped breathing. The fabric of my tent felt too thin, too flimsy, like a barrier made of paper. I turned onto my side, my heart slamming against my ribs, and reached for my flashlight. My fingers fumbled in the dark, brushing against nylon and sleeping bag and nothing else. Then I heard a soft scrape against the ground, a shifting of weight. I swallowed hard and unzipped the tent, just a crack. The fire pit was almost out, casting a weak, pulsing glow. And in that glow I saw it, a figure crouched in the dirt. Small, like a child, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its fingers digging into the soil like claws. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, as if its neck had been snapped sideways. But its face, oh God, its face was turned toward me, and it was smiling. Not the innocent, joyful smile of a little girl. No, this was something else entirely. A stretched, twisted grin that reached too far, exposing teeth that were too sharp. I squeezed my eyes shut, my body locked up, frozen in a way I never experienced before. Then I whispered, "Jake." No response. "Ben." "Sam." I turned back. The figure was gone. I didn't sleep after that. I lay there, every muscle in my body tense, listening to the silence. The horrible, pressing silence. At dawn, I stepped outside, my breath hitching, my gut twisted into knots. And I saw them, tiny footprints, leading away from the fire pit, into the trees. We packed up fast. Nobody argued. Nobody even spoke. We just grabbed our gear and started hiking. None of us wanted to admit how badly we wanted to run. About 2 miles from the site, we met an old park ranger. He was standing near a small service station, sipping coffee like he'd been waiting for us. He looked at us, at our pale faces, at the way we kept glancing over our shoulders, and he knew. "You boys from that old clearing near the ridge?" he asked. I nodded. My throat felt dry. The ranger sighed and took another sip. His hands were steady, but his eyes flicked toward the trees, watching the way they swayed in the wind. "You need to leave this area," he said, "and don't come back." Jake forced a laugh. "What? Is it cursed or something?" The ranger didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. Then he said something I will never forget. "People see things out here." He stared at me, his voice lower now, more serious. "Things that pretend to be human." We didn't ask any more questions. We just left. It's been years now, but sometimes when I'm alone at night, I hear it again. A giggle, high and sweet, and I wonder if it ever left the woods at all. Story 3. A few years ago, my girlfriend, Rachel, and I decided to go on a weekend camping trip in a national forest. We both love the outdoors, the kind of people who felt more at home under a sky full of stars than in a crowded city. It was supposed to be a peaceful escape, just us, the trees, the crackling fire, and the stillness of nature. We found a perfect spot late in the afternoon, a quiet clearing near a small lake, surrounded by towering pines. The kind of place where you can hear your own heartbeat if you stand still long enough. We pitched our tent, gathered firewood, and, as the sun melted into the horizon, we sat by the fire, talking, laughing, just enjoying the simplicity of being alone together. Then the noises started. At first, it was just the usual sounds of the woods, the rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the occasional snap of a twig. But then came something different, a sound that sent a cold trickle of unease down my spine, a branch snapping, above us. Rachel noticed it too. She tilted her head up, her brows knitting together. "Probably a raccoon," she said, but there was hesitation in her voice. I nodded, though something inside me whispered that this was different. Too loud, too deliberate. Then came the laugh. Low, raspy, almost playful. My breath caught in my throat. Rachel grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I swallowed hard and reached for the flashlight beside me. My fingers felt clumsy, the plastic slick with sweat. When I finally clicked it on and aimed it upwards, my stomach dropped. A man, if you could call him that, was crouched on a thick branch about 15 feet above us. His limbs bent at unnatural angles, as if he had been broken and put back together wrong. His head lolled to the side, eyes gleaming in the flashlight beam. And then he grinned. Not the kind of grin you'd see on a normal person. It was too wide, stretching his face like his skin barely fit over his skull. I couldn't move. My body refused to obey my brain's desperate commands to run. Then he shifted, not climbed, not jumped, shifted. His fingers flexed against the bark, long and spidery, and in one sickeningly smooth movement, he twisted his body and crouched even lower, as if preparing to leap. That's when my survival instincts finally kicked in. We're leaving. Now. My voice barely sounded like my own. Rachel didn't argue. She shot up, grabbed her backpack, and I snatched a flashlight and our car keys. We didn't bother packing the tent. Didn't bother dousing the fire. We just ran. The moment we broke into the tree line, I heard it again. The rustling. Above us. He was following. Not on foot. He was moving through the trees. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't like watching someone climb. It was too smooth, too unnatural, like a puppet being dragged by invisible strings. I could hear the branches shifting, leaves shivering under his weight, but there was no grunting, no exertion. Just the eerie, fluid motion of something that shouldn't be able to move like that. I dared one glance up. He was there, keeping pace, watching us run. His eyes never left mine. The grin never faded. I sprinted harder, practically dragging Rachel behind me. Our car was parked about half a mile away, but in the moment, it felt like an eternity. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but the thought of stopping, of letting whatever the hell that thing was catch up, kept me moving. Then, suddenly, the sound stopped. No rustling, no laughter, nothing. The silence was worse. Rachel and I slowed, breathless, our ears straining. I was terrified to look up again, terrified that if I did, he'd be hanging upside down from a branch, inches from my face. But there was nothing. Just trees. Just darkness. We reached the car, flung open the doors, and peeled out of there so fast the tires kicked up gravel. I kept my eyes on the road, refusing to check the rearview mirror, because some deep, primal part of me knew if I looked back, I'd see him crawling after us. We drove until we hit the nearest town, pulled into a gas station, and just sat there, hands shaking, breath coming in ragged gasps. We didn't talk about it. Didn't want to talk about it. The next morning, after barely sleeping in a cheap motel, I convinced myself that it had been a bad dream. Sleep deprivation. Stress. Something logical. Because the alternative, the idea that something like that exists out there in the trees, was too much to process. But when we drove back to the campsite to collect our gear, my blood turned to ice. The tent was gone. The fire pit was gone. Everything we had left behind. Our supplies, our backpacks, even the pile of firewood was gone. As if we had never been there. As if the forest itself had swallowed every trace of us. Rachel turned to me, her face pale. Let's go. We never spoke about it again. Never went camping again. And I have never, will never, look into the trees at night.